Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Tuesday night. We're live, we're national, and our phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. If you want to join the program, happy to chat with you. We're taking calls in the last segment of each hour, every hour for 3 hours. We're doing open phones across America every single hour. And I want to get into a few things tonight. Obviously, a couple of updates here. The sentencing in the BS Trump hush money case, as it was so called, has been called off. Remarkable. Isn't that interesting? I believe, and again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but I think I talked about this, I don't know, a year ago, if maybe more, when we had a million different lawyers on here. I mean, we had Amir Benno. Amir Benno was from the Manhattan DA's office. We've had Doug Burns. We've had Arthur Aidala. I mean, there's a bunch I'm leaving out. Kash Patel. We've had so many conversations, and after all those conversations with these very accomplished lawyers and federal prosecutors and New York City district attorneys, and now in private practice, et cetera, there was only one conclusion we could come up with. The whole thing was fake, phony fraud. And it was not going to happen. Nothing was going to happen to Trump. And now I said they're going to try and put him in jail. But I think, as Doug Burns said it, he's not going to see the inside of a jail cell. And I think that's interesting. Now, some others posited that, you know what, they might have to build a special trailer for him at Rikers Island if they do try to move forward with that. But let me tell you, I mean, it was contentious, right? It really was contentious because these people were being very, very vicious towards President Trump in their, and what I'm going to say was an illegal prosecution of his. But thankfully, they've called it off. You know who else is calling things off? The DNC, now abruptly laying workers off. No severance package, none of that, despite their record donations of raising $1 billion in the presidential campaign. The campaign that, after paying out $20 million to celebrities, closed out the books there with $20 million in debt. Ain't that something? And what else? You know, some stuff going on Capitol Hill. Nancy Mace, man, she's been blazing the airwaves today with her comments on this transgender stuff. And let me see, I think if we have, Count the Lacula, if you can find one of the cuts of Nancy Mace that's quick, I'd love to let the audience hear this. Check it out.
Is this effort in response to Congresswoman McBride's coming to Congress?
Yes, and absolutely, and then some. I'm not going to stand for a man, if someone with a penis is in the women's locker room, that's not okay. And I'm a victim of abuse myself. I'm a rape survivor. I have PTSD from the abuse I've suffered at the hands of a man. And I know how vulnerable women and girls are in private spaces. So I'm absolutely 100% going to stand in the way of any man who wants to be in a women's restroom, in our locker rooms, in our changing rooms. I will be there fighting you every step of the way.
So that's Nancy Mace, and we'll get into some of that in a little bit as well. I think there's a lot more to discuss there. Speaker Johnson weighing in on that as well. And it's a big deal, right? It's a big deal. We now have a transgender member of Congress, something that they've never had to deal with before. And a lot of people are saying we're going to end up having single occupant bathrooms. And I'm thinking, there's no way we're going to go from the typical public restroom that has multiple stalls or multiple urinals, and we're going to replace that with the quote-unquote family bathroom. No way. I mean, it's a great addition. I love the family bathroom. That's fantastic. It was a lifesaver for me. I've always been very hands-on with my children. I used to take them all over the place by myself at times. And, guess what? You have two little girls and you need a bathroom. You don't want to bring your little girls into the men's room, right? Heaven forbid. So, I've had to do it on occasion, don't get me wrong, but I'd much rather go into one of those nice family bathrooms. Well, apparently the family bathroom is now going to be corrupted to become the trans bathroom. I don't know. We'll see how that goes, but we'll talk about that more a little bit later. And Trump made some nominations today. The CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald, Howard Lutnick, has been nominated to be Commerce Secretary. Now, honestly, I didn't see that one coming because the word on the street just a few weeks ago was that he was going to lead the DOGE, right? The Division of Government Accountability or Government Efficiency, DOGE. And I say division because it's not really a department. And that was one of the distinctions that we had in the New Jersey state government. So I'm lending that one to them. Hope they enjoy it. But anyway, my point was it was going to be Lutnick and Musk, and they were going to go in there and take a hacksaw and a scalpel to the federal government and shrink the size of it. And I thought that was a great idea. And then it was announced there was going to be Vivek Ramaswamy, who honestly I think is good at that stuff. But I would have loved to see him in a role which was a little bit more dealing with the public, right? Because he's just so eloquent, right? Him, J.D. Vance, these guys are just smooth talkers. But anyway, I'm sure the wisdom that went into that is encompassing a lot more than I've been able to put into my thinking on that, and I don't think it's a bad choice. But Lutnick to be Secretary of Commerce. Another nomination we saw today was that of former SBA administrator, Small Business Administration, Linda McMahon, the former president of the WWE. She's been nominated to be Secretary of Education. Now, I'm thinking, this is great. She was very effective in the SBA. She's been a small business person for a long time. Will we be bringing in a small business person, a business owner, big business, WWE's big business, to take over the bank, right? Because in effect, the Department of Education is nothing more than a bank these days, right? They give out some block grants. They create some, in my opinion, arbitrary rules on a lot of things that we could do without. Honestly, we could do without. I know somebody out there's going, oh, you think we could do without? I don't know. What is it that they do again? Exactly. That's my point. Yes, we can do without it. We can do without it. We can move the student loans to Treasury or to somewhere else because that's what we do, right? We manage these loans now, Department of Education student loans. So why not put that with banking? And maybe this will be part of what she's going to do. Maybe her job is to help dismantle the Department of Education. Look, this is my wish list, right? This is me wishful thinking. I'd love to see at least one less agency. I'd also love to see the IRS abolished, but I understand it's a thing. So if you have to just make it toothless, that would be great. Now, am I pie in the sky? Of course I am. Right now I'm having a utopian fantasy, thinking that we're going to live a life with no taxes. How do you get all these people in Washington who work for the government to do your job, the task that you've given them, to eliminate their own job? Few people are willing to take on a mission like that, especially people that are career professionals that are like, hey, I'm a few years away from my pension, a few years away from doing this, doing that. I get it in theory. I don't get it in reality. I've never had a pension. I've always only been able to have a 401k, a 403b, that type of thing, other types of investments. But never had a pension. I invested into the state pension system when I worked in the state government in New Jersey, but I wasn't there long enough to really cash anything out. So, my government service in New Jersey disappeared will disappear, I should say, unless between now and my retirement age, I'm able to put in the rest of the time to work on like some board, commission, or authority where, as a part-timer or something, but I could still contribute to the pension. That's something I'd consider, but I would never really go back into government. It would have to be something major. Unless, they kick me out of radio. Then, hey, I'm open, I'm available, here I am, looking for a gig. But my point is, it's going to be very difficult to get people who are trying to make a living for themselves and for their families to say, hey, look, we're going to try and reduce the size of government, and we need your help. I think eventually they're going to be like, you know what? you guys pay us with all this tax money, and if we eliminate income tax or minimize income tax or minimize the size of government, that threatens all of our ability to survive and to do what we do and what we like to do. So I don't know. I don't know if that's going to be very effective. You're going to need a lot of oversight and a lot of good people that you bring in to help bring it down, people that are experts in minimizing organizations, Wall Street people, kind of like a Lutnick. So hopefully more like that will be announced. And there were some others. We're going to get into that as well. Plus the big news of the day, what we were talking about yesterday, Ukraine. They launched some of these long-range missiles. And yesterday, Russia said, if you launch them, I'm going to consider nuclear options for anybody. You heard the whole speech from yesterday. Maybe I'll replay that. But that's where we are. I want to get some reaction from the military community on that because, what happens now? What's next? I don't know. I would doubt that there's going to be anything very active because Putin is a lot of things, but dumb is not one of them. And I don't see President Putin saying, I think what I'm going to do is go into an all-out war with the United States or with NATO or with other nuclear powers because that's what I feel like doing in the, 58 days, 60 days, whatever it is, between now and the end of Biden's regime. I just don't see Putin doing that. I could be wrong, but haven't seen him do it yet. His taking Ukraine, right? The invasion into Ukraine was very slow. It was very, very calculated with, a months-long display, a parade of power, a show of strength at the border, putting all his tanks there and his troops there, really flexing his military might while working the psychological operations machine very, very deeply to confuse people and say, oh, we're going after biolabs that are on the border. Now, while there might have been biolabs there that have been there forever and a day, and a lot of people knew about these labs, they weren't secret, they weren't hidden. It's still enough to get, people that love to look for something that doesn't exist to get them excited, and some of them got excited. Ultimately, that's really Putin just saying, take a look at what's really going on. Okay, I get it. But what's really going on is he's taking back Ukraine, repatriating what was once Mother Russia. Whether you agree with that or not, I definitely don't. I say, imagine the UK coming here and saying, well, we're going to repatriate, or even Mexico. Hey, we're going to repatriate California. No, thank you. We're taking back Texas. No. Vete para allá. Go over there. No, thank you. Not at all. I think once you win fair and square, then you got to defend it, and hold on to it. So, if you have to defend it, you do. But you don't let somebody come and steal your lunch. And good for the Ukrainians for sticking up. Do they have to do it perpetually and in perpetuity and eternally on our dime? No. Do we owe them a debt of security? Yes. Why? The Budapest Memorandum of Security Assurances. We took their nukes and said, we will protect you from Russia. Simple as that. Anyway, we're going to have that conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's scheduled to be with us. Plus, another nomination that's come from Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK, the incoming anticipated Health and Human Services Secretary, Dr. Stella Immanuel, to make America healthy again. We're going to chat with her on this nomination to the Trump administration as well. So lots to discuss tonight, plus your calls. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The Russian Defense Ministry says Ukrainian forces launched 6 long-range American-made missiles into Russia for the first time today. President Biden just days ago gave Kyiv the green light to use the ballistic missiles in the Kursk region of Russia. The Russian Defense Ministry claiming it shot down 5 of the missiles near a military facility in western Russia. Speaking to the European Union Parliament by video, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said now is the time to push Russia towards the negotiating table.
Together we have accomplished much, but we must not fear doing even more
Today, Russian President Vladimir Putin updated his country's nuclear weapons policy. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov saying that now means Ukraine's use of non-nuclear weapons from the West against Russia can prompt a nuclear response. Today marks 1,000 days of war between Russia and Ukraine. At least 10 people were killed and 13 injured in a Russian drone attack on 2 high-rise buildings and a hospital in Ukraine's Sumy region. The State Department says President Biden's decision to allow Ukraine's use of the long-range missiles was spurred by Russia's use of 10,000 North Korean soldiers in the war. Alexis Christoforous, ABC News, New York.
Okay, so that is the story. There's been shots fired, right, by the Ukrainians at the Russians. This has been going on forever, but it's a big deal now because they're using American-made missiles, and it's being hyped up. Many are saying this could be the beginning of World War III. I don't know why. I'm just not very I do believe that could happen, but I don't believe that Putin wants to start this conflict, I don't know, 50 some odd days before El Trompito takes office. But I could be wrong, so I want to get with one of the experts, somebody who's been on the program with us before. He's president of the London Center for Policy Research. He worked for the Department of Defense. He's a former spy and a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. Tony Shaffer, welcome back, sir.
Hey, Rich, always great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. So, Colonel, let me ask you, what
Sure.
is your estimate on this stuff? Do you think that this is the tipping point for World War III? Do you think this is just Ukraine trying to posture? Is this Biden just trying to say, hey, look here, I don't want to leave you hanging. Here's a little something on my way out. What's the best way to sum this up?
Well, it's most certainly not what the Biden White House is saying it is, and that is that it's supposed to be for leverage for Ukraine. It's going to have the opposite effect. As a matter of fact, it's going to make things far worse. You correctly point out that the only thing that's changed between, 4 months ago when they said they wouldn't give Zelensky permission to use these missiles, and now is Trump. And all they're trying to do is muddle the water and make it more difficult for President Trump to do his job, which is what he said he wants to do to end the war. This is about dumping $9 billion more into the conflict. Now, that money could be used for a lot of good here. That's one of the reasons that they lost the elections, because I think most people recognize that Ukraine is not the 51st state. Just saying. So I think that Blinken standing up there and saying we're going to give maximum support to Ukraine by dumping this money is just disingenuous. He knows it's a lie. We know it's a lie. But it doesn't stop him from doing it. And I think it's very clear at this point that Mike Waltz, who's the inbound national security advisor, said today that the Trump team was not consulted. He was not consulted, and this came as a surprise. So, after pledging undying support, as Biden did in the White House and the Oval Office, and this to happen means that all they're doing, that is the Biden folks, are trying to get that money into the pipe so the military-industrial complex will benefit, and they will, and to try to box President Trump into a corner so that he has no choice but to continue the war. And that their theory is, well, if we poke the bear enough, they're going to do something to expand the war, and it'll keep going. So that's what's going on.
Folks, keep it locked right here. We're coming right back with retired Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, president of the London Institute for Policy. And folks, we're coming right back. There's a lot more to talk about. Venezuelans invading America and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
News Nation has obtained new intel documents sent to Border Patrol agents warning them about the expansion of the violent gang Tren de Aragua on the border, but in new states like Virginia. The intel document also warns of the challenges that local and state authorities face when it comes to identifying who is and who isn't a Tren de Aragua gang member, due to the gang being able to blend in with the millions of Venezuelan nationals that have crossed illegally into the United States. It is common for the gang to exploit their own countrymen, according to immigration lawyer Rolando Vasquez, who represents Venezuelan migrants.
Usually you see it in the form of human trafficking, sex trafficking, extortions, and they're all under the threat that, they could do them harm here or even do harm to their family members back home in Venezuela.
According to the intel documents, the Venezuelan gang has a confirmed presence in Washington, D.C. and Central and Northern Virginia, which all correlate with an increase in migrant populations in these areas. The National Gang Intelligence Center assesses that TDA gang members are operating in lower-level fraud and theft schemes and transferring those funds back home to finance more crime. And just recently, according to the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, the gang now has an active presence in every major city in the state, and authorities are warning residents that the gang are running human trafficking operations.
They are very violent toward policing. They're violent toward law enforcement, and so they will fight and they will attack police. They have no respect for law enforcement.
And here I am in Texas. The Venezuelan gang already has an active presence in Dallas, Houston, El Paso, and right here in San Antonio. For News Nation, I'm Jorge Ventura.
So now this gang, which is really a transnational criminal syndicate that ran the prisons in Venezuela, is clearly spreading. All right, Homeland Security officials issued an internal memo about the growing presence across the country, most recently in Washington, D.C., Virginia, Montana, Wyoming. The gang's already making footholds in California, Colorado, Florida, Georgia, Illinois, Louisiana, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Wisconsin. So you've got 16 states, and this is being reported by the New York Post's Jenny Tare. 16 states now have a growing presence of Tren de Aragua, or TDA as they call it. And I think this is a very big deal because when you hear Trump and others talk about an invasion on the country, this is what they're talking about. With us to discuss and help us understand what's going on and the way forward is former national security advisor to Trump's 2020 campaign, former Department of the Defense official, and retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Army Reserve, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. Sir, what's going on with Tren de Aragua?
So it's a replacement, essentially, in many ways, for MS-13 regarding just the terror and scope of their activities. And this is not by random chance. This isn't just Venezuela allowing criminals to move forward. I think this is much of a part of a much bigger effort where Venezuela is being encouraged by Iran and China and others to engage in, essentially, this is unconventional warfare. And
right.
As the report mentioned, they've established a network all across the United States, and they're very dangerous. They are well organized. They're violent. They understand how to use the U.S. system against itself, and obviously they're growing bolder by taking over apartment complexes, fighting with law enforcement. All these things are, a result of the open borders and more importantly, the neglect of Mayorkas, Secretary Mayorkas and DHS, by the fact that they just pretended that none of this existed. And before you knew it, within the last 2 years, you have a full network developed. So it's a very dangerous thing. I think Tom Homan and others are going to take this very seriously when they get in. And I think it has to be something that's examined by us as a terrorist organization that's being encouraged by Venezuela, which would put it on the same in the same category as Al Qaeda or ISIS. I think we should look at upgrading them to a transnational terrorist organization at this point.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that in any way. And Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, you said something that I think is really on point, which is that they should be taken very seriously because they're a lot more than a gang. And I agree with that because I look at these people and I see the way they operate. And Al Qaeda, for example, not that I'm giving a shout out to Al Qaeda, but we know how they operate. They typically they get into their own community and then they want to bomb something, right? It's typically what they do, or they do knife attacks. But this gang has a different way about it, right? Everywhere it's gone, they want to make their presence very, very known, and they also want to break the spirit of whatever community they're in by raping people. I don't believe these people are bloodthirsty rapists. I believe that, like many gangs in the United States and elsewhere, this raping is part of the initiation and part of the message they send to say, hey, we are vicious people. And we know that from looking at what you said earlier. They're a replacement for MS-13. MS-13 was very much the same way with their, cutting people and mailing their family the body parts. Anything they could do to go above and beyond to get in your head and say, hey, we're the worst terrorists you've ever met. And it seems like these guys are like, yeah, we're going to give you a run for your money.
Yeah, and they're fearless. Like you just pointed, like, yeah, they're doing this stuff. They're not even hesitating because they think there's no consequences. So, and that's why I'm saying we have to use resources as we would against any other terrorist organization. We never really designated MS-13 as a terrorist organization per se. And I don't think they ever had the command and control we see in this group. And I do think they have ties back to Venezuela. I think Venezuela in many ways is not only encouraging it, again, they're I think, helping organize it and make sure that it works. And it's something that we should, dare I say, hold Venezuela partly responsible for. I mean, these are Venezuelans. So, if Americans went to a foreign country and started acting out to do acts of terror, well, I think that country would hold us accountable. So I think we owe the same to Venezuela at this point.
We've seen Iran use groups like the Houthis and Hamas and fund them to do their dirty work in different areas of the Middle East. Is there a possibility that Iran is funding Tren de Aragua to do their dirty work here in the United States?
Absolutely. As I said, there's many indications that Venezuela has become kind of a command and control node for a lot of countries to organize and launch things into the United States. And so there's evidence that the Chinese are also there doing things. Iran is very much involved based on the pressure they want to be brought to bear on us internally because of what they think is about to happen regarding President Trump. The Iranians recognize that the more instability we have at home, the less we can focus on issues across the world. So the Chinese, too. That's why the Chinese, I think, are doing things like fentanyl. They're working with Venezuela. They're working for the nations where they can try to get more and more groups like this group in to actually to disrupt American civil society. It's part of a total war conflict of basic philosophy by the Chinese. The Iranians are more just like, we just want to do damage and do what we can to distract America. But yes, there are strong indications that this is a much larger transnational effort to use these guys as terrorists within the United States.
Now, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, let me see something real quick. You are scheduled to stick around for a little bit more? No.
Sure,
but can you? Are you able to? All right, because I wanted to follow up on that, but I have to hit a pause right here. Folks, we're going to come right back with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
The TBI says not only is the dangerous gang growing nationwide, but it's impacting every major city across Tennessee.
They have a pathway to more violence.
The TBI director, David Roush, warning Governor Bill Lee in a budget hearing Tuesday about the rising threat of a violent criminal group, Tren de Aragua.
They're back in all of our major cities. They are running human trafficking operations.
Roush says the Venezuelan gang does not hesitate to attack their opponents in public.
Recently, there was a video that they shot where they shot an individual, a cartel member, 31 times.
31 times, shooting people, human trafficking. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, this is, the same people. We've seen the video of them going door to door in an apartment building in Colorado, the same people we've seen on video jumping the counter in a robbery of a jewelry store, and the same people that they've tried to arrest at a shelter here in New York City at Floyd Bennett Field. And it took, there was 8 or 9 police officers trying to get one guy, and it was very difficult for them to arrest this one guy. And I have to ask you, what do you think the technique, the tactics are going to be from a practical standpoint on actually getting these people out of the country?
Well, I think that may be more basic than going after the terrorist organizations, because these folks probably, as I understand it, are here illegally. So one of the things that Tom Homan has already said is the priority is going to be to get 2 categories of individuals out. First, those who have lost their battle regarding sanction applications. There's about 1.3 to 1.5 million folks who have lost that. They're supposed to leave and they haven't. So that's an easy 1.3 to 1.5 million. But more importantly, the group they're probably going to go after first are these violent criminals, the terrorists and other folks who are clearly identified as being a real danger to our citizens. And this is going to take a comprehensive effort of multiple law enforcement and, border folks. But I think this is what they're going to do. People are fed up with organizations, gangs like this, living and working in their communities and killing people and terrorizing people with impunity. So in my judgment, there's just, this is going to be it's just where the military can come in too. There's a question the other day about what will the military do? Well, here you go. So these people are not American citizens. They are here as foreigners. And I know this is really hard for people to get their mind around, but the Department of Defense can actually do things domestically against foreign threats. As you recall, the British were a foreign threat. We kind of took care of them back in the Revolutionary War days. Just saying. So
the redcoats are coming. Yeah,
that's right.
I'm with you. And look, I can't wait. I'm reading this report. I got a kid in Virginia. Last thing I want to hear is that they're taking over places in Virginia, and overall, I mean, this is horrible for our country, and I think this is a big threat. And there's, I'm sure, many threats. Not to mention these people that were making bombs that they caught coming across the border. I mean, there's all sorts of threats. But I just see it as not an easy one to get rid of. Definitely one that I think we can get rid of. I just think they need to be prepared. This is not going to be calling the local sheriff. I think you're going to need lots of SWAT teams, like you said, perhaps the military, and take very, very aggressive measures to get rid of these very, very aggressive criminals. All right, before you go, I want one more point that I wanted to bring up with you was today, and I bring it from the national security perspective, because you talked before about unconventional warfare, and China has waged war on us with this unconventional warfare, and it's no surprise to me that TikTok and other instruments of the CCP have aggressively promoted transgenderism, as have their agents within the Democrat Party, academia, the media, etc.
Oh, yeah.
And also within Congress. And we now have a transgender member of Congress. And Speaker Johnson spoke on it very briefly today. Listen to this.
I just want to make a statement for all of you here and be very clear. I was asked a question this morning at the leadership gaggle, and I rejected the premise because the answer is so obvious. For anybody who doesn't know my well-established record on this issue, let me be unequivocally clear. A man is a man, and a woman is a woman. and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
Now, perhaps I'm an extremist for viewing this as a national security threat. The fact that we have a congressman that's identifies as a congresswoman and wants to use the bathroom, and we have congresswomen like Nancy Mace and Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking up on this, saying, no, this isn't going to fly. But I see it as the threat that we just talked about from the aforementioned enemies kind of coming to fruition right within our government. Is that far-fetched?
No, it's not. I think that, as I mentioned before, the Chinese are looking at how to pick up on any thread within the context of our society and pulling it with the intent of destroying the fabric of our society. So this is but one other aspect where they're going to encourage and actually amplify voices to cause dissent and harm. So yeah, the Chinese are happy to amplify the trans movement, because the trans movement is, I'm just going to say it, a Marxist movement disguised as some sort of a kind. We have to be kind to these people. Well, they're mentally ill, and you generally try to help mentally ill people. But to add to the fray, one of these transgender people from Oregon made violent threats against Nancy Mace today, where she basically this person said that they wanted to kill her. So the more the Chinese can see that happen, the more they can kind of sow the seeds and amplify it. They're going to do that, and that is indeed a national security threat. And by the way, TikTok and other things the Chinese have been using, this is something, as you correctly point out, this is an information operation that they're using as part of their whole of conflict, kind of total conflict against us, and it's very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And this ultimately is, I think, one of the biggest issues we're facing, because it's grown so much in recent years, where this was like non-existent not that long ago. And now it's, everywhere you turn, it's like, oh, it's normal, right? This one's become so-and-so. Sally's become Susie. It's really, it's a tough one for my simple mind. I'll put it that way. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, I want to thank you for your time. You've been very generous with us. Let everybody know how they find you and how they can learn more about the work you're doing.
Sure. I'm on Twitter, T-Spooky, the T with the T with all the letters, T-Spooky with all the letters with an underscore. And then I'm at projectsentinel.com, where we have a think tank that looks at constitutional issues for everything from the idea of restoring constitutional authority and limitations to the government, as well as constitution-based military concepts. So, Rich, it's always a pleasure to join you. I always appreciate our conversations. Thanks for having me.
You bet, and I'm looking forward to bumping into you probably around Inauguration Week. So, see you soon.
Hopefully so. We'll see what's going on. Yeah.
Sounds good, brother. God bless.
All right. God bless. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to continue with more when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue, and we got a lot coming up in the next hour, so I want you to stick with me. And part of what we're going to discuss is RFK Jr. and President Trump have nominated somebody who was just on with us a couple of weeks ago, Dr. Stella Immanuel, to serve in the administration, likely within the Department of Health and Human Services, under the leadership of the anticipated incoming, fingers crossed, Secretary of Health, RFK Jr. Now, despite my disagreements with him on guns and a couple of other issues, I think he's going to make a fantastic Secretary of HHS, as long as he doesn't declare, guns a mental health crisis, and, we've got to save America by banning the guns. As long as that doesn't happen, we're going to be in good shape. Folks, keep it locked right here. The music means I got to go, but we're coming right back. The phone number 833-482-5337. Open phones across America and the final segment of every hour. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome. Another hour of the program. We are here, we're live, we're national. It's Tuesday night. Here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. Plenty going on tonight, and we're going to get to as much of it as we can, hopefully all of it. Some of the headlines I want to share with you. Let's see here. We've got the criminal syndicate from Venezuela, Tren de Aragua, this gang of criminals that have taken over apartment buildings in Colorado. They're spreading. They're now in 16 states. Not good news, but I believe there's a remedy on the way for that. We also have, let me see here, Dr. Oz. Dr. Oz was picked to be the administrator, so the head of the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, known as CMS. That's pretty cool. Now, I would have thought he would have been Surgeon General, right? Excuse me. Because, I don't know, I think Dr. Oz, he's like America's doctor, right? A lot of people know him. You got a Dr. Oz. I mean, he's got a lot of doctors on TV that are kind of like America's doctor, but Dr. Oz is probably one of the most famous. And I'm just wondering if Dr. Oz is going to be running the CMS, then who gets to be Surgeon General? Now, obviously, they always pick somebody, typically. I think Trump is breaking the mold here with cabinet appointments, trying to pick the best, right? They always pick somebody you've never, ever heard of for Secret Service, and they haven't picked the Secret Service director yet. But word on the street, it might be my buddy Dan Bongino, Danny B, from Queens, New York. Now he's out in Florida now. But Dan Bongino being rumored to be the next Secret Service director. And let me tell you, I don't think you could find a better guy. You need somebody that's loyal, somebody who understands the administrative state, the deep state. He definitely gets that. Somebody who loves America. He definitely loves America. I think he'd be terrific. But again, another rock star pick, loyalty and expertise. Like Matt Gaetz, loyalty and expertise. Now, some say, well, there's no expertise there. But others would disagree. I would disagree and say, I think he would do a fine job. I really do. I think that's, right now, like I said, Linda McMahon before, I said this earlier, Linda McMahon, I think, would be great at the Department of Ed, especially if they're going to dismantle it. Just because she has a business person's mindset. And I'm sure there's been times where, she's had to make cuts in order to keep the balance sheet right. Something they don't do in government ever. They don't do it. So I think when you have somebody who knows what that's like, it brings an incredibly valuable nuance to the table. Same thing like Matt Gaetz. Yeah, they're trying to trash him all over the place, saying that he's never been a prosecutor and he's not a well-known trial attorney. But the reality is, since when have those been prerequisites for Attorney General of the United States? Right? I think the prerequisite is that the president picks you. And I know that to be the case. We've seen it time and again. The same way they're beating up Trump, saying, oh, Trump's going to try and use recess appointments. Look, as long as Congress, the Senate in particular, doesn't screw Trump over with avoiding going into recess, Good for him on the recess appointments. I saw a chart today on the news, just a quick aside, that showed how many recess appointments were done by the last 5 presidents. Trump had 0 on the list from today. Let's see, Obama had some, Clinton had a whole bunch. So I think this is not out of the ordinary. I think Clinton had almost 3 times the amount that Obama had. Doesn't sound too far-fetched to me, right? Not too far-fetched at all. Remember another big thing that presidents can do, but they don't all do? When Bush fired some United States attorneys, and they were like, oh, what happened? What are you doing? How dare you? I remember that, like yesterday. And everybody'd forgotten that when Clinton came into office, he fired every single U.S. attorney because he had the right to appoint them all. And nobody cared about that. A lot of times these things are much ado about nothing. But anyway, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Congresswoman from Georgia, who was in New York not that long ago. I saw her at the, I didn't get to say hello to her just because we kept passing each other and it was very busy. But she was at the Madison Square Garden Trump rally, which was very epic. And it was very cool that so many people came to my great city. But Marjorie Taylor Greene was slamming Republican colleagues today for talking about releasing the ethics report related to former Representative Matt Gaetz and telling them to put it all out there. Now, she posted on Twitter saying if her Republican colleagues in the House and Senate were going to release ethics reports and rip people apart, then they should put it all out there, meaning their ethics reports should also be put out there. And I thought that was great. You know, that's how you fight fire with fire. But what all of this stuff is about is the following. Right, on The View, they kind of summed it up really well. Sunny Hostin, she took a jab. The jab that she took was at Matt Gaetz. And minutes later, I guess her producers told her in her ear, we want to avoid any problems with legal, so we need you to say the following disclaimer. But I want you to hear the first part of the clip as she's slamming Gaetz, and then the second part as she has to correct herself. Listen to this.
How could you nominate someone with allegations of child trafficking trafficking across state lines and having sex with a 17-year-old? My understanding further on in the interview, they discussed the fact that once he finds out that she's 17, he stops having sex with her.
Sonny, you have a legal note.
I do have a legal note. Thank you, Whoopi.
Hold on. Now, that first part of it was the hearsay, right? Saying that so-and-so said about so-and-so about what was going on with Gaetz when he was engaging in this alleged activity. Now, the producer's get in her ear, and you could see. They make her read it off the prompter. She's struggling hard to read it. She's not talking off the cuff. And Whoopi says, you have a legal note, Sonny. And she says, I do have a legal note. Listen to this.
Matt Gaetz has long denied all allegations, calling the claims, quote, invented, and saying in a statement to ABC News that this false smear following a 3-year criminal investigation should be viewed with great skepticism. That DOJ investigation was closed with no charges being brought.
We'll be right back.
And Whoopi had the right idea. Let's get out of this thing quick. And on that note, I'm going to get out of this quick as well because I want to talk about another nomination that's been made by Trump and Bobby Kennedy Jr., RFK Jr., the anticipated Secretary of Health and Human Services, Dr. Stella Immanuel, to serve in the Trump administration. I want to hear it right from her. Let's find out what's going on when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well,
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
A new nomination from the president-elect. He wants Dr. Mehmet Oz to be the CMS administrator. He is saying in a statement, the president-elect, that Dr. Oz will work closely with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. to take on the illness industrial complex and all of the horrible chronic diseases left in its wake.
That, of course, Peter Ducey from the Fox News Channel discussing the nomination of Dr. Oz to serve as the administrator for the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And I want to talk to another healthcare professional that rumor has it, people are pushing for her to be part of the Trump administration. Who those people are, we may or may not find out. But she's been with us recently on the program, and I wanted to have her back because I think she'd make a tremendous asset to the Trump administration in the Health and Human Services area. Dr. Stella Immanuel, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. It's such an honor to be back.
Likewise. So first, let me get your reaction. What do you think of Dr. Oz heading up Medicaid and Medicare services?
I don't know much about Dr. Oz apart from him being a TV doctor and running for the Senate, but he's MAGA, and I know that if he's on the MAGA side, he probably has ideas that are going to kind of buck the system and the current medical industrial complex. But we are very aware of what JFK is doing on health. I think the only thing I don't agree with JFK on is the abortion issue, which I don't think is going to be in his jurisdiction to deal with. But there are many things that no, RFK, sorry, not JFK, RFK.
Yes.
Yeah, so there are many things that he has that I share with RFK about health, so I think if we can just keep him away from abortion issues, then we're good to go, and he created a website called MAHA, Make America Healthy Again, and I think they ask the American people to go out there and just nominate those that they want to kind of help in leading the way in the medical, ideas. So I was one of those that was nominated overwhelmingly by the American people. So that's how the whole, we the people nominating came about. So he created that website so that the people can actually nominate people that has been in the forefront of fighting against the medical industrial complex, and it will be an honor to be able to suggest or give some ideas about things that we think should help to make America healthy again. We have, prior to 2020, I was just a regular physician, and I just took whatever it is that they taught me in medical school and took whatever it is that the pharmaceutical companies said. And to me, that was gospel truth until COVID started. And then I was telling people that hydroxychloroquine works and people were getting better. And I got attacked. And I was like, this is kind of weird. This is not true, And then, of course, and they turned science just upside down its head during that whole COVID thing, which we still have going on, kind of, just things like, masks that do not really help to filter COVID or things.
Right.
I mean, we all knew that if you had the flu, you did not get the flu shot for that year, but they were pushing COVID jabs for people that already had COVID. Or things like, natural immunity was kind of just discarded. And then, there were just too many weird things that were done. And then especially the fact that people had allergic reactions to these vaccines and they were just pushed to the curb. And many people are still suffering from the side effects of this vaccine. They were pushed to the curb. Meanwhile, the disease itself was less dangerous than the vaccine. And then just the propaganda and a lot of craziness that happened during that time, it woke me up from checking things again and saying, maybe these people have been lying to me all these years, or maybe I have believed things that I shouldn't have believed. So that is how I started getting into more natural medicine. For example, zinc is a potent, very, very potent antiviral. And then, of course, zinc cannot enter the cell. So a good transport system like quercetin or elderberry can help zinc enter into the cell, which will help people with the flu and COVID and stuff like that. So we just started using common sense things that have actually, they've done studies in the NIH. Zinc and viruses is a study that was done in the NIH. Quercetin, it was from the NIH that got all this information, and we put together just simple, vitamins and stuff that help the American people stay healthy. And then, of course, hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin that have been around for generations.
Yeah.
Have good safety profiles. All of a sudden, they were vilifying it and trying to vilify all of us.
And outlawing it. And what's interesting, Doc, while you're talking, I was just reading an article, and there's it looks like it's an advertisement, but there's a quote in it, and has a picture of RFK Jr., and it says, RFK Jr. calls ivermectin a miracle drug, quote. And this was, a drug Joe Rogan and many others, said, hey, this stuff, it's saved my life. It made me better. A lot of people became very healthy. And there's a recent publication in MedPage Today, one of the special reports that features you as the nation's #1 prescriber of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin over the last 2 years, or the 2 years that they noted, I guess, following COVID. Over 69,000 prescriptions. Have you had any complaints?
No. They knew I was doing it already. So we had like a team of doctors, took care of patients during COVID. I remember during Delta, we had like 2,000 patients waiting to see us at all times. We were working around the clock. We did not sleep. So we took care of the American people. And, if I'm the highest prescriber of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, that just showed that my team and I saved a lot of lives. We've seen over 100 and something thousand patients, and we saved a lot of lives. Until today, we still see patients. There are still people, I don't believe it, 4 years later, still getting sick from COVID, and we still treat them. Every day we still get sick patients, not as many as before. That is why my advice to the American people is get hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin in your medicine cabinet. If I had to say so, I would actually advise that they put something like hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin over the counter, like it is in many nations, and that is, it's less hydroxychloroquine, ivermectin. They are less. Their safety profile is better than Tylenol that's over the counter. It's better than Benadryl. So these are things that they should have over the counter. And of course, I would suggest things like more naturopathic medicine. I've worked over the past 4 years. I've worked with naturopathic doctors producing things like Immune Plus, COVID, like things that have kept my patients healthy, safe, and just kept them away from the hospital. And these are things that we should go back to teaching nutrition. We should go back to teaching this in medical school. I didn't learn this in medical school. I started dabbling and learning all this after this whole pandemic came about. And I really just sat down and said, I need to figure out how to get my patients better. So my whole mindset shifted from just being a doctor that takes care of disease to being a doctor that really looks at the health of people and seeing how you can stay healthy. Do you know vitamin D in the winter? Many people get viruses, flu, and RSV
just for a lack of vitamin
D deficiency. You know what I'm saying? Because in the winter we don't go outside, we don't have enough sun. So when we put together something on our website called COVID Vite, it has vitamin C, D, zinc, and quercetin. That became a hallmark for millions of people people just getting healthy because of it and not getting sick from the viruses.
Doc, stand by for just a moment. Folks, we're coming right back with Dr. Stella Immanuel. She has had people all across the country nominating her to serve in the Trump administration, and I think she'd be terrific. We're going to continue this discussion on how to make America healthy again when we return. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. We continue our conversation. And remember, we've got open phones across America at the bottom, the last segment of every hour. 833-482-5337 is the number, 833-4-VALDEZ. And Jennifer Rubin from the Washington Post. She's a columnist there, I believe. And she had a lot of things to say. And she was positing on how Democrats need to position themselves with health care and other issues in order to get voters to understand how bad the Republicans are. And she says we have to be very pithy and very direct so that people get the message. Listen to this.
Republicans want to kill your kids. It's actually true. If you're going to oppose vaccinations, if you're going to stop breakthrough medical research, if you're going to allow minors and all sorts of people to get semi-automatic weapons, which they use to shoot up schools, well, then you are responsible for kids' health and death, unfortunately. It has to be that simple and that direct, and it has to be over and over and over again.
So there it is. She says Republicans are killing your kids because of vaccines, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the lack thereof. I want to continue our conversation with our guest, Dr. Stella Immanuel. She is pledging to make America healthy again. And Dr. Stella Immanuel, when you hear this columnist from the Washington Post, Jennifer Rubin, say that Republicans are trying to kill your kids because they oppose vaccines, what's your initial reaction to that?
Isn't that the same Democrats that want to terminate a pregnancy all the way to birth? That's not killing our kids. That's weird. Or trying to get our kids to, cut themselves up and, become other sexes and then kill themselves with drugs. And I mean, this is craziness. But people like her are just trying to make things for dramatic effect. The American people know better because the American people lived through 4 years of safe and effective vaccine that ended up killing a lot of people, that end up with excess deaths right now, and that has ended up with a lot of people getting blood clots and all kinds of things, safe and effective, and then take 4 different, take boosters, and it doesn't work. You know what I'm saying? So we all lived through that. We all lived through people begging hospitals to allow them to take hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and they rejected it. We all lived through lockdowns. We lived through 2-year-olds being put masks in their faces in the daycare centers, traumatizing a whole generation of children. We lived through that. So what she's saying does not make sense. And I think the American people know that. That is why there was a resounding rejection of Democratic agenda. I believe that putting somebody as putting some really people that are going to buck the system is the only way we can change things right now. There are many things that are if most of us, frontline doctors that have been in the front line of this battle that were vilified and our licenses threatened, and they came out after us all kinds of ways. We know what it means to stand against the system. And I'm glad that we're in a position right now to do something good for the American people, for our children, for our generation. I'm a pediatrician. I am a trained pediatrician before I started working in the ER, gave a lot of shots, and I have a lot of patients too that don't take vaccines. And now we're beginning to look at vaccines with 2020 lenses instead of, just taking it. I'm not right now. I would
doing
say,
what you're told.
Yes, instead of just doing what we're told. So right now, I would say there should be total transparency on vaccines, and there should be no. Everybody should be able to say no to vaccines if they don't want to. They should not have to force any child, any adult, any person to take vaccines. People should make an informed choice, and they should actually give people informed choices before they, before they start trying to inject something in your body. Because, like they say, your body, your choice, except when it's shot. So these are things that we should be pushing right now and said no. If you're going to talk about vaccines, we want to see the profile. We want to see the safety profile. We want to see everything. Give us information so that people know, how did you make this vaccine? What are the people you tried it on? We need all that data before we. Right now, I'm anti-vaxxer till I get good data.
Let me ask you, Doc. I want to ask you a question about that. Because with your experience working in the ER and working with children, there are people out there that say, look, I'm willing to vaccinate my children for MMR and whatever's necessary, like through 5 years old, in order to get them into school. But anything beyond that, they don't want to do. And I'm wondering, for people with that type of mindset, is the damage that vaccines cause or potential damage, is it too late for your 5-year-old, or is that a sound strategy? What are your thoughts?
You know, when we, years ago, maybe I've been practicing medicine for over 30 years. There were times when we had just maybe total vaccines that they gave. Childhood vaccines was probably about maybe 10, 15. But right now, by the time a child gets to the age of 5, they've been injected with over 40 or 50 different vaccines. In fact, when you take your 2-month-old to the clinic right now, by the time they give you Pentacell and HIV, and you're basically taking about giving the child about 10 vaccines. I don't know. We need to, that's why I say that we need more data. We need to find out what is causing SIDS in children, what's causing sudden infant death syndrome. We need to find out what is causing autism in children, and we need to allow transparency, because when you bring up that this is caused by vaccine, they just label you anti-vaccine and say crazy stuff. They need to actually allow transparency, and then also they need to take away the immunity that pharmaceutical companies have for vaccines. They should take away that immunity so that way, if somebody gets hurt by your vaccine, you need to pay for it. So those are some of the things that they need to do. And then, like I said, our food supply. I watched a video about the difference between just cereal from the same companies in Europe and cereal in America, and the kind of toxins and the kind of things that they put in our food. So these are some of the things that I would be grateful if in these 4 years they can clean up all this stuff, just so that people can have, if you want to take toxins into your body, do so, but be informed that these are toxins and then you take it. You know what I'm saying? Don't just pass corn syrup into our children's food, and then you're wondering why obesity is killing America. So those are some of the things that I want to do. But most importantly, I think they should start teaching nutrition in medical schools, nursing schools. They should learn nutrition. A lot of us went to medical school and we never learned nutrition and health. We need to learn nutrition and health, how sugar affects the body. And right now, most people in America, a good percentage of people in America are pre-diabetic, and they shouldn't be because of our food. So I believe that they should get back to teaching nutrition to medical students. They should also teach naturopathic medicine. Like, for example, right now, we have people that grow, we do like moringa and lemongrass. These are things that they gave us when we were growing up for fever and, helping with your digestion. Things like mint and lemongrass. We need to get back to medicinal herbs and what these herbs do for our bodies. And this need to be taught in the medical school. So those are the kind of things that I would like to propose, that these are the kind of ways to turn our medical system back so that we're not just drug and big pharma focused, we are health focused. So those are some of the things: exercise, good air, vitamin D deficiency. Check all those things. These are things that we know. These are things that are in the NIH. These are things that have been studied, and they need to incorporate it in our medicine so that we could be healthy. The past 4 years, if you go on our website, drstellamd.com, we have just with COVID, vitamin C, D, zinc, and quercetin, kept hundreds of thousands of people healthy, that they don't even catch the flu just because we give them zinc, vitamin C, and quercetin. You know something? So this, I believe that we can be healthy again. We can be a better nation, but there has to be transparency, and they have to allow naturopathic doctors to come in the fold. They have to allow nutritionists to come in the fold and get back to making America truly healthy, not just allow big pharma. They should stop big pharma from advertising medicine. They need to open up right now. They need to open up licensing. They should allow doctors to practice across the state. You can go to New York and there'll be thousands of doctors in New York City, and then there are little villages that don't have doctors. They should allow telemedicine with one license to practice across the state, just like the federal government does. With one license, you can practice in any state if you're working for the federal government. They should allow those things. And insurance companies, there's just so much that they can do to clean this system. We spend so much money in healthcare in this country, more than any other nation, but our healthcare is still so messed up. So I believe that we have an opportunity to do some good for the American people and get us back, in a more healthy mindset, stuff like that.
Dr. Stella, you mentioned vitamin D, zinc, and quercetin. Now, I've taken zinc in the past, very rough on the stomach. What type of zinc are you recommending that hopefully isn't so rough on the stomach?
The way we put our zinc, we put just, I think when people take zinc, they take a little too much. And zinc doesn't have access into the cell. So we, like our Covivite is not really rough on the stomach because it's just 20 milligrams of zinc, milliequivalents of zinc, and then combined with quercetin and vitamin D and vitamin C. So a lot of our patients that take it tolerate it very well. You can tolerate lower amount of zinc if you have a zinc transport system. The zinc that we have, people just go to the pharmacy and they buy 50 milligrams of zinc. Of course, it's going to be rough on your stomach, and it can actually, higher levels of zinc can actually cause copper deficiency that can cause anemia. So what we have done in most of our supplements is that we have the lowest amount of zinc. Some of them just have about maybe 15 milligrams of zinc, but milliequivalents of zinc.
Is that enough?
Yes, it is enough if you take it with a zinc transport system like elderberry or like quercetin. Like our Covivite has vitamin C, D, zinc, and quercetin, but it only has 20 milligrams of zinc, which is pretty mild on the stomach. So that is, our patients take it and they don't complain. They don't have, the whole, because we don't, and then we package it even in we have an electrolyte drink that has energy, has all your vitamins. It has just about 10 milligrams of zinc, but it also has elderberry, it has bilberry, it has other things that can help transport zinc into your cell and make it more bioavailable for you so that it becomes a better immune support for you than just taking rough zinc.
Well, Dr. Stella, I'm going to try the stuff that you've got on your website, drstellamd.com, and I'll let you know how it goes the next time we talk. Folks, make sure you get a copy of her book, Let America Live, Exposing the Hidden Agenda Behind the 2020 Pandemic. You can get a copy wherever books are sold or on her website, drstellamd.com. And if you want to buy any of these supplements that she has, whether it's hydroxychloroquine, or ivermectin, or any of these this COVID cocktail she's got, go to drstellamd.com. Is that right, Doc?
Yes, and if they use promo code RICH for your people, they can get a discount. I tell everyone in America, if there's anything you can hear from me, get hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin in your medicine cabinet. If I had my say so, they will get these things to be over the counter like it is in many nations. But in America, you need it as a prescription. So if you do telemedicine all over the country, thank God, that's why I'm such a high prescriber, because thank God over the past few years, we've given the American people the ability to get this medicine in your medicine cabinet before you get sick, before the bird flu gets thrown around, or before another pandemic comes thrown around. At least you have it in your medicine cabinet. So
and all they got to do is go to your website, right? drstellamd.com, drstellamd.com. Dr. Stella, I'm out of time in this segment, but I want to thank you for being here. You are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. God bless you, ma'am.
God bless you, too.
Thank you so much. And, folks, we continue with more to come straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Congratulations on just an amazing show. I know you've worked so hard in the industry and nobody deserves it more than you do. So I'm happy to see you really succeeding here. It's awesome.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The president-elect nominated Howard Lutnick to lead the Commerce Department. He says, in part, he will lead our tariff and trade agenda with additional direct responsibility for the Office of the United States Trade Representative.
So that's good news, I think. President Trump, choosing Howard Lutnick from Cantor Fitzgerald to lead the Commerce Department. But we also have a clip from Howard Lutnick at Madison Square Garden just a couple of weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago. Listen to this.
125 years ago, we had no income tax. and all we had was tariffs. All we had was tariffs. And we had so much money.
And we had so much money is right. There was a whole industrial revolution. People were married. They weren't getting divorced as much. Their wives stayed home. They were able to raise a family of 4. Back when you had 4 kids, some people had 6. Go figure. Now you've got young people saying, I don't know if I'm going to have kids. I don't know if I'm getting married. I don't know if I'm going to buy a house or live with my parents till 30. How things have changed. All because of this quote-unquote progressive income tax and the government keeping their hand in our pocket. I say abolish the Fed and get rid of the IRS as well while you're at it. Anyway, I want to get a couple of ideas from you guys because clearly we've talked about a lot of nominations tonight, from Matt Gaetz to the Dr. Oz to Howard Lutnick and so much more. We talked about Venezuelan gangs and the rockets that were fired over into Russia and just so much more. And, of course, open phones across America. We're going to kick it off with this segment and, of course, in the next hour as well. But let me see. Let us go to Ken calling us from Lansing, Michigan, WILS. Go for it.
Good evening, Rich. A great show as always, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Donald Trump as our new president is the greatest thing that could have happened in my lifetime. These so-called leaders that we had were not leaders. But let me get on to what I told Kristen. By the way, I told Kristen, I thought it was you answering the phone. I'm thinking, what the hell is Rich answering his phones for?
I wish I had that many hands, right?
Yeah, but I couldn't believe how much he sounded like you. It just blew me away. But
he's got a future in radio.
Yes. So Dan Bongino, I think, would be an excellent choice, Rich, for Secret Service. After the debacle in Pennsylvania this summer, when the most incompetent boobs that ever wore a protection badge in this country couldn't spot a knucklehead up on a flat roof, basically from 140 yards from our president. And the people in the crowd were even yelling, hey, there's a guy up on that roof.
Right.
There's a guy up on that roof.
100% right. Listen, Ken, no question in my mind that Dan Bongino would be fantastic. And another one that I would like to, now that we're talking about nominations and everything, Kash Patel. You know, I've interviewed him dozens of times, and he's terrific. And I think he would be great in a number of positions. But as the FBI director position remains open, and him having the level of experience he had as national security advisor to the House Intelligence Committee, and then as the chief of staff at the Department of Defense, and as a federal prosecutor and a public defender, I think he's been on all sides of this. And, you know, the one that really blew the lid off of, you know, the main investigation from the Senate Intelligence Committee, the infamous Nunes memo, where they realized that they were spying on Trump. And I think he would be fantastic as the director of the FBI. So let's get that out there. Let's put it out into the world and into the ethos, as they say, and put it in prayer as well. Ken and Lansing, thank you. Kash Patel, I'm hoping, and Dan Bongino, hoping you guys are part of the administration. Folks, your calls and more straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, let's continue with the calls. Let's go to Brute in Albany area, New York, WGDJ. Brute, you had a question for me? Go right ahead.
Yes, Rich, you've done so much for Trump during this whole election cycle. It went on for years. You were protecting him, protecting his character, his name. You really were awesome. You stuck by him. Now, if I was Trump and I said to you, Rich, what particular department would you like to?
Well, you know what? I'm gonna give you the answer on the way back. Folks, don't go anywhere. It's open phones across America, and my response to my dream job in the Trump administration. You might be surprised. Don't go anywhere. It's Rich Valdez. We're coming right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to our program. We're live, we're national. Today is still Tuesday, and the phone number 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I want to, of course, get to your calls. Always good to speak with a number of callers that we have, but I also want to remind you about what's going on in the world, right? What's happening in America at night. Now, part of what's going on tonight is a few things, right? We've got the sentencing in Trump's hush money case has been called off. Amen. Praise God. Hallelujah on that one. Let's see. The DNC is now laying off workers rather abruptly. No severance package, even though they had a big fundraising year with this $1 billion presidential campaign that ended with $20 million in debt, interestingly. Same amount that they spent on all those celebrity endorsements and whatnot. The grift is grifty, right? I made that up. And we also have Nancy Mace trying to ban the first transgender congressperson from the ladies' room on Capitol Hill because this congressman was originally a congressman, and now he's a congresswoman. And this is a very interesting story because you've got Nancy Mace, you've got Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others that are up in arms about this. But the Republican from South Carolina introduced a controversial bill to ban transgender individuals from using Capitol Hill bathrooms that align with their gender identity, not their, God-given gender, if you will. The legislative move is targeted at Sarah McBride, a Democrat from Delaware who will be the first transgender member of Congress when she's sworn in this January. Now, this brief bill was unveiled by Mace earlier today, and it just basically says that no officer or employee of the House of Representatives may use a single-sex facility, including a restroom, changing room, or locker room, in the Capitol or House office buildings other than those corresponding to the biological sex of such individual. And this is something that would have to be, enforced by the sergeant at arms, at least according to what they're proposing in the legislation. Now, the Speaker of the House weighed in on this, saying that this is a unique issue that they've never had in Congress before, and that men are men and women are women, basically, end of story. Mace weighed in saying on Twitter that biological men don't belong in private women's spaces, period, full stop, end of story. And Marjorie Taylor Greene also weighing in. We've got a clip of that. Listen to this.
It's been reported that you said you'd get into a physical altercation with a biological male if you saw them in the bathroom. Would you get into a physical altercation with?
How is that reported? How is that reported?
It's been,
how is that reported?
It's been on social media that was
so
said. So
how is that reported?
I'm just wondering if you would get into a physical altercation with
I shouldn't
McBride,
have to, but I shouldn't have to do that. No woman should have to. But look at what men have been doing to women. Look at all the female athletes that have had to compete against men. There's a volleyball player that has brain damage today because of a biological male spiking a ball into her head. Should any woman have to endure that? So if you're going to ask stupid questions like that, don't advocate for mentally ill men pretending to be women invading our spaces. You're a woman yourself, and you shouldn't accept predators in your bathrooms.
Do you think Congresswoman McBride is mentally ill?
Yes, he's mentally ill. He's a biological man pretending to be a woman. That's a mental illness. There's something wrong with him.
Now, to be fair, or to add some context or color here, up until about, I think, 4 years ago, the previous version of the Diagnostic Statistical Manual included gender dysphoria as mental illness. And that was only changed in the most recent, the DSM-5, that I think came out, 2018, 2019, 2020, something like that. And again, not making a pronouncement on that. I'm not a doctor, but I know this is a hotly debated topic amongst medical professionals, but for, not quite a millennia, but for a very long time since the introduction of gender dysphoria, it was considered a mental illness. And I'm not trying to malign anybody that is suffering from this or that, has to live their life this way. I'm just giving you the facts as I understand them, because I think this is a contentious issue. It's a hot button issue. It's one that we constantly see, and it's one that becomes an even hotter button issue, if you will, when people are trying to protect their children, right? Because there's always the case of somebody says, hey, look, I'm 18 years old. I feel like I'm in the wrong body. Let me go to my doctor and see what my doctor says. And if this is the solution we come up with, I want to be the opposite sex, and they may convert, right? They may have a sex change type of surgery, transition process. I'm pretty ignorant on this, but, you've heard how it goes. I think it becomes a very, very bad issue when you have a child, somebody that's under 18, even a teenager, even the women that we've interviewed on this program that have talked about detransitioning, and because they made this issue prematurely. Now, we've had other people that call into the program and say that they made that decision, have lived that way for decades. So the pendulum swings both ways. But this is definitely something that we haven't seen in Congress before, and it's definitely just beginning to bubble. I think this is going to continue to stay hot. We'll see how it goes. And Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, has now been nominated to be the administrator for CMS, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. Dr. Stella Immanuel joined us in the last hour. She was talking about her plan to make America healthy again. That was a great conversation. If you missed it, I would love for you to check it and listen to it and share it with your friends. But we also sat down with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, and I want to play a chunky clip of that, because that's a big story from today, which is the rockets that were fired, right? These long-range missiles that were made in the United States that are known as ATACMS, ATACM little s. These ATACM apostrophe S, basically. These ATACMS missiles are made by the United States and were authorized by President Biden to be fired by Ukraine into Russia, which, could exacerbate a problem. And I've got a clip from my interview with Tony Shaffer that I want you guys to weigh in on. If you heard it, you'll get a little repeat of it. If you didn't hear it, you'll get a little taste of it. You can always listen to the rest of it later on the podcast version of the program. But this is in response to these rockets that were fired by Ukraine into Russia. Listen to this. So, Colonel, let me ask you, what is your estimate on this stuff? Do you think that this is the tipping point for World War III? Do you think this is just Ukraine trying to posture? Is this Biden just trying to say, hey, look here, I don't want to leave you hanging. Here's a little something on my way out. What's the best way to sum this up?
Well, it's most certainly not what the Biden White House is saying it is, and that is that it's supposed to be for leverage for Ukraine. It's going to have the opposite effect. As a matter of fact, it's going to make things far worse. You correctly point out that the only thing that's changed between, 4 months ago when they said they wouldn't give Zelensky permission to use these missiles, and now is Trump. And all they're trying to do is muddle the water and make it more difficult for President Trump to do his job, which is what he said he wants to do to end the war. This is about dumping $9 billion more into the conflict. Now, that money could be used for a lot of good here. It's one of the reasons that they lost the elections, because I think most people recognize that Ukraine is not the 51st state. Just saying. So I think that, Blinken standing up there and saying we're going to give maximum support to Ukraine by dumping this money is disingenuous. He knows it's a lie. We know it's a lie. But it doesn't stop him from doing it. And I think it's very clear at this point that Mike Waltz, who's the inbound national security advisor, said today that the Trump team was not consulted. He was not consulted. And this came as a surprise. So, geez, after pledging undying support, as Biden did in the White House and the Oval Office, and this to happen means that all they're doing, that is the Biden folks, are trying to get that money into the pipe so the military-industrial complex will benefit, and they will, and to try to box President Trump into a corner so that he has no choice but to continue the war.
That, again, is my a part of my interview with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer, former national security advisor to Trump's 2020 campaign and retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army Reserve. He's also an intelligence officer. He's a spy. Yeah, he knows his stuff. And Tony Shaffer is a wealth of information. Again, if you didn't hear the full interview, I hope that you check the whole thing out. The same with Dr. Immanuel, and anything you may have missed, richvaldez.com is the website for that. And, of course, your calls. And prior to this hour starting, a caller had asked me the question, what would I do in the Trump administration if asked to serve? And I'll give you my response to that on the other side. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
I want to say thank you for what you do. You people speak the truth.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our conversation, our late night national town hall conversation with you all, we the people, the American people. The phone number is 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And right before the break, somebody asked me if I could serve in the Trump administration, what job I would want. I've got to tell you that, honestly, I don't want to serve in government, at least not on the inside. I would have to give up my radio gig, and this is like a dream come true. I absolutely love this audience. I love the fact that I get to do this with you every day. This is a true honor and a privilege for me, and I wouldn't want to change this for a 9, 10, 12-hour day that ends with meetings, from the office to some restaurant where you're getting home late night. I mean, it's just, it sounds like a grueling life. I've worked in government before. It's a lot. It's a lot, and I'm going to say no thanks to the full-time gig. However, if I were to be appointed to a commission, a board, or authority or something like that, I'd be open to something like that where I could still do radio and still serve the country, still serve in the administration. I'd be open to that in whatever capacity, but not angling for it, at least not at this point. And very grateful for the caller, Brute from Albany, who asked that question. So thank you, sir. Shout out to WGDJ. Now let us continue. Let's go to Joe, Salem, Arkansas, KSAR. Joe, go right ahead.
Hey, if you're not going to pick one, I'm going to pick one. You would be excellent in a diplomatic arena or press secretary.
Oh man!
And that's because you know how to talk to people and kind of put them down a little bit without them even getting upset about it.
The Velvet Hammer.
Yeah, But listen, boy, so much to talk about. One of your best shows ever, man, tonight. Very informative. But Tony Shaffer, now he should be in the administration and national security, in my opinion, if they're not thinking about him yet. But boy, he'd be great. Now, these attackums that Biden sent over there. Once a snake, always a snake. I knew when he said smooth transition that there was something up there, and they're trying to cause Putin to go against Trump here and get a big old war going. Same way with the Venezuelan thing. I think under the Posse Comitatus Act, down here in Arkansas, we're well aware of the rules of that. Now, you can use military on invasion and even National Guard troops, where you can use National Guard troops internally also. And I'm telling you, we're locked and loaded, the Posse Comitatus and the state militia, and our governor is sending troops to the Texas border to assist the sister state, revolving them out to help out down there. So that's part of your internal and national situation there. But it's not. If anybody remembers the song "American Pie," that they let on like that was a Buddy Holly story. Absolutely not. There's a website where a fellow in a ministry, Roy Taylor Ministries, American Pie. You can get it that way, and it should have all of the lyrics on there. It's a 15-minute song. And it taught everything in that. That was inspired and wrote. Nobody really knows who wrote it, but God inspired it to be written, and it is a story about the death of America. It's a funeral dirge about the death of America. Now, everything's happened in that song except for nuclear bombs dropped on the U.S. Bye-bye, Miss American Pie. And we know the Democrats want the death of America as it is, which, by the way, Latin means heavenly kingdom. So what I'm going to say is I thought Trump coming in would slow down or stop some of the wars, but actually we better be ready just in case, because God may let this go on a little longer.
Yeah, I hear you, brother, and I think you're right. Trump coming in will slow them down eventually, but everything gets worse before it gets better in this situation because people are panicking. And like Tony Shaffer said, this is them playing to the military-industrial complex, trying to get their last expenses in, trying to justify their last expenses. They're going to try and push through just about anything they can. Whatever they can use their power for, they're going to use it. And that's just the nature of the beast in politics. Joe in Salem, Arkansas, thank you for your call, my brother. I want to go to a caller in Texas, but I don't want to cut you short, and we've got the music coming in now. So when we come back, we're going to be going to the calls again. I'm going to go first up to Alan in Leavitt, Texas, KGNC. And, of course, we've got callers from Chicago, from Montana, from Idaho, from Tampa, Florida. Love Florida. Charleston, South Carolina. Let's see. Arkansas again. Valdosta, Georgia. Bedford, Indiana. And so much more. And those are great stations like WBIW, WVGA, KSAR, WTMA, KBFI. Let's see what else we got. KOFI. KGNC, WLS. I mean, the amazing stations, the amazing callers. I love this late night national town hall conversation. It's absolutely, like I said, it's an honor and it's a pleasure. And I love the nice things you guys say, too. Just a great crowd here. Anyway, folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more coming up. We continue this conversation. I got a couple of other clips I want to play for you, but really want to have this conversation with you because quite frankly, there's just really a lot to discuss and a lot of reaction out there tonight. Keep it locked right here. It's Open Phones Across America with me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere. All right, amigos, welcome back. And we're going to continue with your calls. So if you're on the line, don't worry, we're going to get to you. But I wanted to say that yesterday, I needed to get to it, but it was a very busy news day. But yesterday marked the birthday of someone that used to host this program. His name, Larry King. And in honor of Larry King's birthday, I wanted to, use a little bit of this time in speaking with you all to talk a little bit about that. And there's a clip that I want to play for you guys. It's a very short clip, but it's Larry King discussing his radio program with another amazing talk show host, David Letterman. Now, a lot of people don't like Letterman because he's a lib, but from my perspective, I have a penchant, if you will, for talk show hosts. I like a lot of them, right? I think a lot of them bring a lot of interesting things to the table. Joe Pine is another one, well before my time. I watched the clips on YouTube. But Larry King joined Letterman and was talking about, of all things, the people who call his show late at night. And I thought, this is probably one of the best things that I do, right? This is one of my favorite things. You might think it's the opportunity to interview former president or anybody else, these wonderful guests that we get. But really, it's speaking with you guys, getting the scoop from across the country. And interestingly, when I saw this clip, I said, that's exactly how I feel, Larry. So I'm going to let him say it because he says it better. Here's Larry King.
What it is, I think you're kind of at the heartbeat of America. You sit there in this radio studio. I look out the window on the capital of the United States, and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room. And I think that comes through the airwaves. There's something about it. After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, people might call about, what do you think of David Letterman? People might call about baseball races. Mm-hmm. People might call about, what do you think about popcorn being delivered to a television studio? Anything, but there's that magical thing. You've hit it. I don't know how to word it. Studs Terkel, who was here recently, said it's kind of like a composite of America. It's Walt Whitman-esque. I don't know. I just know it's fun to do.
Yeah.
And I think if I didn't enjoy it, the audience wouldn't enjoy it. I enjoy it.
It's a great show, and you're perfect for that time of night. Your voice just seems to suit the hour perfectly. Let me ask you, assuming that what we've described here is true, that you are sampling all corners of America, have you ever, since you've been doing the show, seen differences of opinion come from different parts of the country, or seen one general attitude change over the course of months?
Well, when I first started, you could get a call and sense an attitude. Like Seattle would be more liberal than Biloxi. That's been changing. There's a kind of, maybe it's due to all of us in this business we're in. Accents are changing. You don't hear accents anymore, especially if someone's under 30. We've had an effect on that because, in media, they don't hire, so the local disc jockey doesn't have a southern accent anymore. And there's also, when you get on a certain topic, America's a lot smarter than we think, at least a lot smarter than people in Washington think. People are sharper. They're in tune with things more. And now I sense there's a kind of, like you take a thing like nuclear power. Man, there's a national consensus on that. And I think President Reagan hipped onto it over the weekend. That people don't want nuclear bombs near them. The threat, what that's done to us, there's a national think on that. So you can't say, well, Dallas is going to be more conservative than New York on the subject. That's gone.
Yeah. This point of a nuclear power, is that as a result, do you think, of well, this is not really like Three Mile Island. Has that changed everybody's notion?
That started, and then the election of Mr. Reagan, who was a hardliner.
Now, I just want to jump in here and say, A, happy birthday to Larry King, and B, this clip is from May of 1982, so they're talking about the newly elected President Reagan, and interesting how here we are 40 years later, actually more, 42 years later, talking about the election of President Trump. Just interesting how the times change and how the magic and the energy of open phones remains the same, right? With calls from Chicago and Texas and Montana and Idaho, Florida, South Carolina, Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana. It really is a pleasure to be here. So that's my ode to Larry King for his birthday. And I want to get back to your calls. Let's go to Alan Levitt, Texas, KGNC. Go for it, my man.
Well, it's quite an honor. I hate to correct you, but KGNC would be Amarillo. That's where you're live right now.
Well, you know, I have asked our call screener probably 4,000 times to check the master list, and I don't know why call letters that are not accurately checked when you're speaking with them are on there, but this is where we are. Where are you? How are you listening to the show?
I listen to you probably 3 times a night, very often, because I listen on KGNC Live. Then I
so you are on KGNC.
Delay on KRFE. It's 95.9, and that's on then from midnight to 3, and then I listen in on 880 in Nebraska. Some nights.
Oh, wow. So I'm here yelling at the call screener, but you are on KGNC, just not right now. I got you. Well, thank you for tuning in on all those stations.
You're exactly as instrumental as you were in getting Trump elected, getting him across the line. It's going to be even more important that you stay exactly where you're at, because it's going to be a heck of a fight, and we've got a very short time till the midterms, probably in 2 years, to try to get things turned around somewhat. Reagan actually had 4 years, and he was in a recession during the early part of that. He lost the midterms. He lost his majorities and had to deal with Democrats the rest of the way. But he had turned the economy around enough that by re-election, he got reelected. It's going to be a heck of a battle, but you're a great communicator, and your 2 interviews tonight with Colonel Shaffer, Tony Shaffer, and Dr. Immanuel, just fantastic. I mean, you just do such a great job, and you make it sound so easy.
Oh, God, thank you. Let me tell you, I'm going to just share with you real quick, Alan. I really do appreciate the compliment, and I take it as a compliment, because I was trained in this business by 3 guys at a New York City talk radio station, WABC, probably the strongest signal in America, probably the most famous talk radio station in America. And the first 4 or 5 years of my career, I was on the air there. And I worked as a producer for the great one, Mark Levin, who was one of my mentors, as was John Batchelor, famous late-night radio rock star, and Curtis Sliwa, local radio legend in the mornings and middays. And all different, very unique styles. You know, Batchelor was an interviewer that was very technical. He knew the background. He was very geopolitical in his analysis. Levin, very intelligent, very analytical when it comes to issues of the Constitution, very humorous, very witty, and very tough. And he had gotten a lot of advice from Rush Limbaugh. And something that Rush taught Mark and Mark taught me was, and I'll do my best Levin impression here, was, Richie, you're the show. You're the show. You go on there. You don't need the callers. You don't need the guests. You go in there and you give them the best of you and you be yourself. And that's what Mark told me, and it stuck to me, and that was my thing. So now I was afraid to take a lot of calls, and I was afraid to have guests. I was like, I've got to do the show. I've got to put on a show every day, monologuing and reacting to audio and just giving you the best I could give you. And the reality is, in local radio, it's not like national radio. I have, a full call board. I got a dozen people waiting to share their opinions. In local radio, sometimes you don't have all those calls. And you get to talk more. So I spent all these years doing that in local radio, and then I start filling in for the legend Jim Bohannon, who was the successor to Larry King on this amazing program that's as old as I am. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to do interviews. I've really rarely interviewed anyone. So, I'm talking to the great one, Mark Levin, and he says, Richie, on my Fox show, I do interviews. And I'll tell you, what I do, I ask a good open-ended question, and I let them do all the talking. And that is the formula that I employ. I only get in when I have to, when I hear the producer in my ear telling me, all right, we got to get to the break. Because, there's a clock, and we have to have integrity with our clock. And that's what I let people say what they have to say, and I listen to what they're saying so that I can ask a follow-up. And I don't think it's a very sophisticated formula, but I appreciate your compliment, because I always thought, I don't really do a whole lot with the interviewing. I really just try to let the people do what they do. And that was hard because I think as a talk show host, you're kind of like, well, I want to do the talking. But you also have to have, I guess, a degree of curiosity and inquisitiveness about yourself where you want to ask a follow-up. And depending, whether it's a fun one, about them, their personality, their background, or something about the subject matter. So anyway, that was a little tidbit on that, Alan, and I really do appreciate what you said.
Format, and you meld very well from the interview with some very good guests like you had the two tonight. Excellent information there.
I do appreciate it, Alan, and Godspeed to you, sir. Shout out to KGNC and all the other stations that you listen to this program on. God bless you, sir. Alan in Leavitt, Texas. And folks, we're coming right back. Your calls and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, let's go to Dan in Chicago, Illinois on WLS. Dan, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Rich, really quick aside. That last caller has nailed it. You can't go to Washington because we're having too much fun. I've talked to you more in the last and listened to you more in the last week than I have my wife at night when I get home. But this is my third time calling in a week. But if you did go to Washington, your caller, Joe from Arkansas, he's got the pipes. He could fill in for you.
He does, right? That Arkansas accent is for real.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, it's fun to watch the Democrats implode. Dr. Oz ran as a Republican. Trump nominates him. Who made him famous? Oprah.
Yeah, right. Dr. Phil, too.
Dr. Phil. He's got a conservative network. Who made him famous? Oprah.
Yeah.
So it's you gotta love it. And I heard
it's funny, Dan, not to cut you off. I don't want to steal your time, but I wanted to say I was watching. They give you these little videos on YouTube and on Instagram, and one of the ones I keep seeing is Trump with Oprah back in 80 something. And they're all in. She's the biggest fan of Trump. She's so nice to Trump. And it's like now, not so much. And it's just interesting, what a few decades does.
Right. Well, it's like they said, they all loved him until he turned on him. And the other thing I heard today on Shapiro or Matt Walsh, to get even with Trump, so he doesn't have a good economy, people are said they're only going to spend money on what's necessary: food, rent, utilities. They're not going to do any excessive spending. They're going to save their money. That's kind of a conservative value, isn't it? That's playing it pretty close to the vest.
Yeah, what's even funnier, Dan, is all these women saying, you know what, because Trump won, the liberal women, we're no longer having sex. We're going to buy guns. We're going to learn how to defend ourselves. It's like they've embraced the Second Amendment and abstinence all in one.
Yeah, it's the Trump effect. You got to love it. It's sweeping the nation.
Yeah, that and his really cool dance, right? Thank you, Dan. Very kind words. I appreciate it. Shout out to Chicago, Illinois, one of the powerhouses there in the Midwest, WLS, where we are live and national. Dan, thank you, sir. I want to continue. Let's go to Eduardo, Tampa, Florida, streaming the show online, richvaldez.com. Eduardo, go right ahead.
Yeah, definitely, Rich. Well, Governor Hobbs in my former city, Chicago, Governor Pritzker, these people are obstructionists. And when we do these raids, particularly on criminals, we can do them at night. So we don't have the media and all this attention during the daytime. And also, I'm watching as I'm on hold, somebody like Adam Kinzinger. He'd rather be talking about January 6th, and he's broadcasting he's being interviewed in Woodlands, Texas, which is right there by the border.
Right.
But he'd rather be talking about January 6th. So people like that and Liz Cheney, we need to deport them too.
Yeah, you know what? You're right. And just for anybody who's listening, Governor Katie Hobbs, she was on ABC News yesterday saying we won't allow the deportation of illegal aliens. Just listen to this.
Would you as governor allow state police and National Guard to carry out mass deportations?
We will not be participating in misguided efforts that harm our communities. And I've been incredibly clear about that.
So, Eduardo, I think you're right, and I think they're going to have an uphill battle on their hands, both of them, right? Both the incoming AG in bringing these cases against the sanctuary cities and states, and of course these cities and states.
Cut their funding is what we need to do.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And the deep state tried to get me. It was a little malfunction here with my microphone, but I'm back and I'm better than ever. You can't mess with me. And I want to continue with open phones across America. Let me see. Where do we go? My buddy Jerome, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, pay attention, my brother. This is what winning sounds like. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, let me ask you a question. When they have those confirmation hearings for old Fox's Pete Hegseth and Matt Gaetz, can we just cut to the chase and get to the part where the raping and the child molesters started? Can we just get to that?
Well, I mean, you could fast forward to that part, but I would say fast forward to the part where they say no charges were ever brought against Gaetz and that he's already denied this stuff and said this stuff is all fake, phony, and fraud. I think the term he used was invented. So, yeah, guess what? I'm pretty sure, and I don't want to make a formal prediction, but I am going to say I am pretty confident that Matt Gaetz will be, in some shape, way, or form, Attorney General. I'm pretty confident. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's going to make it in. Pete Hegseth, I think he's going to be okay, too. Jerome in Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA, thank you for calling. I appreciate somebody that's not a sore loser. And even though you lost this election, I'm glad you called in to talk to the winners. Thank you, sir. Let us continue. Where do we go? I want to go to Sarah, Bedford, Indiana, WBIW. Go for it.
Hey, great call screener, does a great job, hard job to do. Real quick, I think you should stay on the air, but if you had to have a job in the administration, press secretary would be great because you just know how to handle people. And then another thing is, a friend of mine has a name for Kamala Harris. It's Camellia because she's like a chameleon. She was changing her political colors right before the election, waffling on gun control and the border. And anyway, and by the way, Jerome wants to talk about child molesters. He should think about their defunding the police and rethinking justice that's going to let criminals, including child molesters, go. And when you got people trying to change their kids' sexuality in the schools, that just opens the door. So he should look in the mirror at his own party. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sarah. Very kind of you to say. Shout out to WBIW. And with seconds to go on the clock, let's go to John in Arkansas, KSAR. Go for it.
Hey, how you doing today? The transgender thing you were asking about. No, transgenders, males should not be able to use women's bathrooms. Children should not have reassignments because their bodies aren't sexually formed yet, so that's a problem.
You're right. They're not formed. It's a huge problem. And I agree with you. Definitely a bad move. John, Arkansas, KSAR, thank you. Mike, Valdosta, Georgia, WVGA. Quickly, go for it.
Well, President Trump is showing that he knows how to manage his message.
I think you're right. He manages the message incredibly well. And I appreciate it. Sorry, the music kicked in and went over you, but I appreciate it. Folks, that's it for me tonight. Hasta la próxima. Until the next time, America, take care, good night, and God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez, and I'm doing it again tomorrow, God willing.